that I'd ever be a slave again, I'd take a gun and just end it all right away. Because you're nothing but a dog.
The institution of slavery was profitable from the moment it reached American ports. Archival documents illustrate how slaves were advertised and sold. A choice cargo, the flyer says, of about 250 fine, healthy Negroes just arrived from the Windward and Rice Coast. The prices for slaves could net hundreds, even thousands of dollars. For those who tried to run away, the bounties could fetch a fortune. Those recaptured and returned to their slave owners, the punishment on the plantation could lead to amputation, mutilation, and even death.
There are people who lost limbs, lost their sight, and even though they were impaired in some way, they still were required to do certain chores.
Tommy Boudreau is an historian born in Galveston, whose own family tried to hide the dark realities of slavery.
Sometimes we were treated like the livestock. We branded. You were branded.
For young, healthy children, there was always a high value. And historian and genealogist in Galveston, Texas, Sharon Baptiste Gillens reads from a slave deed from the 1830s.
Grant and sell unto John Lockhart of the state and county aforesaid a Negro girl named Rachel, of yellow complexion, about 10 years old, and a slave for life. So $500 in 1837 was an awful lot of money. That was a lot of money.
Gillens herself is a descendant of slaves, and through her own ancestral research, she learned her great-great-grandparents were sold in the early 1850s.
There was a mother who ached for her children. To have a child ripped from you, sold away to someplace unknown, must have been heart-wrenching.
Don't want to fight no more, no more. Ain't going down the road like I done before.
On the backs of millions who were enslaved in America, cotton was king. Even though it was legally banned in 1807, the slave trade flourished until 1865, the same year the Civil War had come to an end. And Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation was enforced, followed by the 13th Amendment, formally abolishing slavery.
They raised families, they had goals, they had hopes, they built communities, they were strong, they were resilient, they were determined. I've inherited that. I can be proud of the fact that, is it terrible they went through what they did? Yup. It's terrible. But they won, because I'm here.
This picture is from approximately 1908. This is...
June Collins Pulliam is a fifth-generation Galvestonian and a descendant of slaves.
Certainly, the enslaved people who never saw that day hoped that it was coming, if not for them, for their descendants. Juneteenth was the evidence that hope is worth it.
Pulliam's great-great-grandfather moved their family to Galveston right after they were freed. They had been enslaved on the neighboring Boulevard, Texas. It's an island just northeast of Galveston. At age 5, her great-grandfather, Ralph Albert Skull, kept a journal detailing life in Galveston after Juneteenth. June's mother, Isola Collins, published a book, Island of Color, where Juneteenth started, based on that journal and local interviews.
His journal and my mother's book documents that black people adapted and survived and thrived, were very much about community and helping each other. But you get a sense that there's much of a unified purpose of we're gonna march forward here. We're gonna do this in spite of this situation that we're
in. Spiritual hymns and gospel music helped build a foundation of community and faith.
Reedy Chapel was a beacon.
On 20th and Broadway in Galveston stands Reedy Chapel. In 1848, the property was gifted by their white owners as a place for slaves to gather and worship, and it would later become the first African Methodist Episcopal Church.
Reedy was the closest black church. It was the closest to the courthouse where General Order No. 3 was read, saying that the Emancipation Proclamation is now in force. So people came to this church.
Diane Henderson Moore has spent the last 7 decades attending Reedy Chapel AME Church, the home of the first Juneteenth celebration.
Can you imagine the excitement and we're actually free? We don't have to try to run away. We're actually free.
My ancestors came to this church the year of 1865. I can only imagine that they saw that this is a place where we can get what we need. We need to be educated. We need a place where we can gather with other like-minded people and worship our God.
Keep my heart to live for thee.
Lawrence Thomas has lived in Galveston his whole life. His ancestors are ingrained in the history of the city and in the Avenue L Church, the first missionary Baptist church in Texas.
They gave me the biggest level of pride.
Why do you say pride? Why do you feel a sense of pride from slavery?
Because of what he went through. Pride means that he left a legacy. He left a family to cry about what he went through. Don't cry about that. He was reading. They say he was reading every day. So he was leading by example, even in his older age.
And as descendants of slaves, Juneteenth marked a new beginning, a new identity for Thomas's family.
My great-grandfather's standing in the back. His name is William Menard Thomas. So what his dad did, remember it was told us after Juneteenth, he dropped his slave name. My name is Lawrence Thomas on Juneteenth because on Juneteenth, he dropped those names and became John Thomas. And his boy name was William Menard Thomas. He put the name back in the history.
I'm saddened by their circumstances, but I realize that they really were victorious. I think I'm more sad for the people who held them.
Really?
Yeah, because I can be proud of what my family went through. Maybe they're not so. Maybe that's why they don't want to talk about it.
Coming up,
this was placed here in 2014.
we take you to the birthplace of Juneteenth.
The 4th of July freed the land. June 19th freed the people.
How did it finally become a federal holiday?
I can breathe.
How the death of George Floyd pushed it to the forefront, and later,
If we don't tell the story, who will?
why descendants of slaves say it's important we never forget. The quiet, beachside town of Galveston, Texas, is a popular tourist destination. But many who visit may not know it is rich in African American history. So what are we doing here? We're going to stop here and look
At the Juneteenth marker, this was placed here in 2014 to mark the spot where General Gordon Granger arrived with Union forces in 1865.
Sam Collins chairs the Juneteenth Legacy Project and was behind the local push to mark an important part of history.
We've tried to reimagine this space and change the energy of this 2200 block, which once housed several auction houses where human beings were traded and labor was exploited.
Collins partnered with Galveston's NIA Cultural Center, a local nonprofit, to create the Absolute Equality mural depicting the story of Juneteenth and give the once negative space a positive meaning.
Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation, and then we have Gordon Granger. You have United States colored troops standing behind Granger.
It was on June 19th, 1865, that Union Army General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and issued General Order No. 3, putting an end to slavery in America, more than 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. It set the last of the more than 250,000 slaves in Texas free.
When individuals come to visit, they're able to go to the port where enslaved people were brought in, and also where the ships docked with the soldiers to bring the message of freedom. They're able to retrace the steps of those Union soldiers as they moved through the city. This is the Middle Passage marker.
These markers are part of the city's Juneteenth Freedom Walk.
I selected 5 stops because there were 5 general orders.
5 historical stops from the port of entry, the now famous mural detailing the timeline of Juneteenth. Galveston's Custom House, where General Order No. 3 was posted. There's the majestic Reedy Chapel Church, first built in 1848 and became more than just a place of worship. And the Ashton Villa, home to the Juneteenth Museum.
Most people are shocked that they were never taught any of this in history.
The walk explores how the events of the day unfolded.
If you can reimagine, in 1865, notice would have been posted on the door.
For example, if someone comes to Galveston now and stands on that corner of the headquarters where the troops were, there's a sense of imagining that you can then do of, wow, they came here. You can put those things into clarity, something that helps you to really understand what happened. These were real people. These were not just some semi-fictional characters.
What does Juneteenth mean to you?
It has very special significance to me because it reflects something that's ours, that was ours first. Before it spread across the country.
Texas was the first state to recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday in 1979. More than 24 states would follow suit. But to recognize it as a federal holiday was the biggest feat.
The 4th of July freed the land. June 19th freed the people.
Freed the people. Sylvia Myers is the widow of the Reverend and Dr. Ronald Myers.
Support the campaign to make...
who many credit as the father of the modern-day Juneteenth movement.
He wanted America to celebrate Juneteenth with the same vigor as you would the 4th of July.
Dr. Myers, an activist from an early age, made it his life's work to have Juneteenth recognized as a national holiday. He even got the ear of a young senator from Illinois.
He and Senator Obama, they talked often about Juneteenth. He was a Juneteenth activist.
Okay, breathe. Breathe in the name of the...
May 25th, 2020, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Cameras are rolling as a man named George Floyd is handcuffed and pinned. He was suspected of using a counterfeit $20 bill at a convenience store. One of the officers is seen kneeling on Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, killing him. Floyd's murder sparked outrage around the world, a racial reckoning, putting Juneteenth at the forefront.
I think much of it is the power of the camera, that things that we knew had been happening at intervals for the previous 150 years was captured on camera. And once you've seen something like that, you can't unsee it.
If it were not for cameras everywhere, people still may not believe that those kinds of behaviors persist to this day.
President Biden signed the Juneteenth federal holiday into law in 2021, 3 years after the death of Dr. Myers.
We aren't free until all are free. And he knew that celebrating just the 4th of July by itself did not complete America's freedom, but celebrating June 19th and the 4th of July completes the celebration of America's freedom.
But where do we go from here?
Let's learn why we're celebrating. What was it that made it special enough that we have to celebrate, commemorate the emancipation of these people.
We still are fighting for equal rights.
Absolute equality?
Absolute equality.
I pray that it hopes that it gives them the fire to find out about themselves, to go find their history, and they'll be shocked.
Why does it matter at all?
Why does July 4th matter? For the same reason. It's an important day that documents something that happened that changed the course of society. It changed the course of society. I can think of no other reason better than the fact that it is our July 4th. It's our Independence Day.
Coming up.
It happened. Not talking about it doesn't make it go away.
Why celebrating Juneteenth is just the beginning.
People don't understand the conditions of enslavement.
Why these descendants of slaves say education is key. And why the meaning of Juneteenth should be honored throughout the year.
Nobody knows the trouble I see.
The slaves of Texas were the last to be freed in America on Juneteenth, but freedom was not won so quickly.
As soon as the larger society realized we're going to have to change everything, they said, no, we're reversing this. We're bringing in Jim Crow. We're going to do everything we can to somehow make things the way they were without calling it slavery.
Jim Crow and black codes would follow, legalizing segregation in the South. It would marginalize African Americans, denying them the right to vote, dictated how they could work, and denied them an education.
We stand on their shoulders.
Tommy Boudreau and the Galveston Historical Foundation helped create And Still We Rise, Galveston's Juneteenth story, an exhibit chronicling the plight of African Americans in America in the city's historic Ashton Villa. Constructed in 1859, Ashton Villa is one of the first brick structures in Texas built by slaves.
I want them to leave this exhibit to know it did happen. Slavery did happen.
Outside stands a statue honoring the work of former Texas Representative Al Edwards, who helped make Juneteenth a state holiday.
Now, I think the younger generation, they're waking up and realizing that the stories they've been told over the years, they're all lies.
She, like so many others, believes education is paramount to understanding the plight of African Americans in American history, to keep the past from repeating itself.
There are people who don't believe what happened. Only through looking at the facts can we know exactly what happened. The truth is what we're missing.
Good, bad, it's a part of our history. And I believe in that. If you don't know your history, it's bound to be repeated.
People talk about the Holocaust. Does anybody ever say, hey, that makes me uncomfortable, let's not talk about it? They don't. But in order for America and for us to heal, we need to talk about it.
It's a mistake to think that only black people need to know about things that black people have done or experienced, because the African American experience is tightly woven into the entire American experience. You cannot extricate one from the other.
I think that celebrating is wonderful, but just remember that we have so much more to do.
Juneteenth is an important part of American history that should continue to be talked about, celebrated, and never ignored. I'm Calvin Hughes. Thanks for watching.
Come together, you and me, come together right now. There's joy unity.